Conversations on Co-Production is Expert Link's free monthly meeting where people come along to chat all things co-production with like-minded individuals. These podcast episodes are taken directly from the conversations, so if you like what you hear, come along and join us by signing up via the link below.
For me, it's about having a genuine desire and want to engage and talk to people that your service matters to, or your organisation. Do you know what I mean? If you start from that point of having that genuine, we really want to find out what you think about this stuff, in whatever way that might be, then it really sets you up. So it's kind of having those values and that kind of underpinning culture within the organisation that genuinely wants to do this, rather than it be something that's a kind of add-on. We should be doing co-production, it ticks a box, it will get us funding, coming from almost like a top down. It's really more about that, having that we genuinely want to get this right, and to do that we need to talk to you, and we need to have you on board, and we need to have you as part of that decision making process. So I think it's that it's where that's coming from, where that desire is coming from, is the bit that can really create and change what the outcome might look like, and how effective that will be, and how valuable that will be for all the parties involved as well, and how people, I think we did a recent co-production event looking at all of this and looking at values and things, and one of the things I was saying is, as an organisation you might think you're doing co-production, but actually have you asked the people that are involved, have you asked everyone around the table if that feels like co-production to them? And what would they say if they were asked that question, and how might they do it? So I think it's really about where's the heart in it, if that makes sense, rather than what's the outcome of it, so to speak.
I've been in some spaces where professionals come in and try and be kind of too over familiar, as if they're like, I'm in the cool place, I'll be cool with you guys, and it's really awkward and it's not appropriate either. So just, I think also having conversations, if in my role I'm kind of bringing two sides together, I guess, in one space. So if you're in that place, making sure that the expectations of maybe some of the time this might take, some of the support you're providing and things like that, because especially if you've got some sort of piece of work where it's written into your contract, you must do a reference group, but there's not really or a lived experience group, but there's not really understanding of the time and effort that takes, then making sure that the other people that have sort of asked you to do that understand that side of it as well, and it's not just like that they get the process a bit more.
I think probably the one thing that comes up all of the time in all of the conversations I've had around this and the kind of differences and things is where the power is and the balance of power in the relationship. And the further you move towards true co-production, the more equal the power base is that within the working. So I think with involvement, there's a lot of power or a lot of control by the people that are kind of requesting involvement, if you see what I mean. And a lot of things already decided, and it's more about kind of maybe asking what people feel about the things that you've already kind of decided, if that makes sense. But whereas co-production is literally having a sense of we need to do something or we need to achieve an aim, but then getting everybody around the table on an equal basis so that everybody's part of that decision-making process right from the word go, where possible, and has kind of equal weighting and equal power in terms of those decisions as much as possible. So I guess in its simplest format, that's probably where I'd start with it. But there's lots of other things as well, but I think the balance of power is the big thing that comes up.
Things about co-production is it's about combining everyone's strengths. So you bring together a group of people, specialists, could be service users, those with lived experience, whatever, but it's utilising all their strengths to get the best result, rather as involvement can be seen as maybe a bit piecemeal. And yes, we've involved those with lived experience. I'm not sure that it doesn't necessarily mean they're fully represented or their views have been fully listened to. Whereas in co-production, I think it's using their strengths and using their knowledge along with the strengths and knowledge of specialists in inverted commas who work, whether it's in the public sector, third sector or private sector.
Yeah, that's all relevant and related. I'm thinking on the difference from a different angle. If we're talking about a business or a customer focused organization, not the NHS, not where we are all. Involvement would be that we involve the customers to gather their feedback on the service we provide or on a product. If we're buying something from a shop like Asda, we involve people to see what they think about this product. But if we co-produce, it's about how we ensure that our customers are within the process of actually putting what they like on the shelves. And this is the difference in my view, that what we would like to see, what our patients would like to see in the NHS is what co-production means for me. However, involvement would mean that it's slightly too late and we're just gathering what have happened and what is the feedback from them. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, involvement could mean anything. You know, it could mean just you know, somebody answering questions or just with a you know, a vague interest in something. But you know, co-production is really defines people working properly in partnership and given an equitable chance to be part of something right from the beginning, not just at some stage later on. So there is quite a difference. Obviously, you know, some involvement's better than no involvement, but yeah, there's you know, as we've said many times in these meetings and other ones, that sometimes the words can get swapped by people who don't really respect the difference. They probably know the difference, but won't properly look into what co-production is. So yeah, it's definitely something to be you know, respected and kept as it, you know, as it should be, which is proper partnership.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how exactly what words to use, but I think thinking about everyone involved and particularly what we would think about as professionals is being willing to really inquire into this idea that you don't have all of the answers, and being willing to really park, I guess, some of the assumptions that we have about knowing what's best for someone and what services and things should look like. That includes co-production. So I think it's something that needs to happen kind of prior to or during the process of co-production, is a bit of humbling that sort of needs to occur so that it can be really authentic.
When we're looking at a spectrum from involvement through to different levels of co-production, we are talking about relationships with people, and all relationships are built on power. So we do need to recognize that when we're actually entering any spaces that involve people from a wide spectrum of different life experiences. So I think it's about looking at those different levels of participation and how we can, you know, raise people up that ladder in terms of meaningful participation and in projects that we're working with.
Yeah, I was thinking there's a difference between like what I personally know and like my knowledge versus what the organisation I'm working for is doing as well. So that's like a bit of a difference, and it's just interesting. And the projects I'm currently working on, we're going to definitely be in that middle area where it's a sort of reference group rather than a co-production group, I feel, which I think is making steps in the right direction. It's sort of early days of doing engagement work at this organisation in some ways. So that's it's kind of a good place to start, and then can work our way up from there. But like, yeah, previously have definitely been in projects that call themselves co-production, and we're definitely in the middle of that ladder instead of being proper co-production. So yeah, that's kind of where I am at the moment, is really sat right in that middle section, I think, of having a group that will have influence rather than full co-production, sort of equal power and balance and that side of it.
So I started as a new in a new role as the co-production lead at council. So a lot of kind of the interim work that I've been doing has been to map out where we're at across the borough, and what I'm, you know, within an organisation. And what I've kind of found is there's kind of pockets of amazing co-production where you can definitely see kind of equal power sharing, but it's more about getting the consistency across the board, across all of adult social care, to make sure that, you know, teams and people who are drawing on this care and support services know what it is and how they can get involved, and providing opportunities, and just having a more widespread approach to it where there's full understanding across the board, as opposed to kind of varying different levels. So it's an interesting piece of work to kind of see how that work develops over time, but it's definitely a long-term piece of work around kind of getting that.
There's a lot of misunderstanding over what co-production is, what it involves, and I think a lot of companies need to kind of take the time. I work in the charity sector in Scotland, and it's something we have a co-production network in Scotland, and those that have bought into it, I think, are thriving and really taking it forward. Organisations that haven't necessarily bought into it or not fully bought into it, I think, are maybe struggling more with it. And I think that as much as the network and the organisation behind it are doing all they can to promote it, there's only so many hours in the day, so many weeks in the year, and I think the actual levels probably dropped through COVID to a point, particularly with service users, because they haven't necessarily got the technology or the confidence to use the technology like Zoom or Teams to engage as they maybe would face to face. So hopefully in the next few months, I think hopefully it'll start to move back to where it was pre-COVID, as more and more people can meet in person.
I think that we, like as a team, are quite strong now within our kind of co-production journey, and everyone's sort of on the same level. We know what it is, it's kind of sunk in, and like within our organization it's pretty good across the board. But then because we do so much partnership working for our clients, it can be quite challenging if you've got other partners or other workers from different organizations where they're not really on board, or it's not part of their organizational strategy, or, you know, whatever. So we're kind of just working with individual people from different organizations that might be involved with our clients. And then if there's high turnover, we might lose all that work we've done with an individual if they move to a different place or stop working with our client. So it can be a bit of a struggle to kind of see those changes being made sort of in a broader sense.
I was wondering whether it would be possible, when we're thinking about sort of advanced or transformative or true co-production, whatever you want to call it, is it possible to start there? Like, and what would it involve for a project or an organisation to actually start off being, you know, using true co-production rather than the bits below it? I don't know if anyone has experience of that or any ideas.
I'm just thinking, and it's something that I kind of talk about quite a bit when I'm talking about co-production and stuff. I think there's almost like a bit of I don't know if it's a caveat or what it is, but I think in an ideal world, we would do everything in a co-produced way. But I think there's also something about recognizing where the people that you're working with are at and what they feel comfortable doing as well. So I guess for me, it's not about just co-producing everything. You know, I think there will be people certainly that you're working with, people with lived experience, that are at that point where they are comfortable to be in a co-produced space. But there are lots of other people who we still want to hear from, and we still want to kind of find out what they think about things and all of that. And I think that's where we need to make sure that we've got a variety of different things at all of those different stages. And then hopefully with working towards, you know, building people's confidence and feeling more comfortable with moving towards the more co-produced activity. Does that sort of make sense? So I think there's something about, yes, you know, in an ideal world, there's definitely that co-produced space that we want to aim for and be in and do as much as we can in. But I think that potentially can also isolate some people that you'd want to get involved. So it's about having the opportunity for those people to build up slowly. But yeah, so there's something about having a variety and being able to support people in as many different ways as you possibly can, with a view to, you know, having a, you know, as much co-produced as you can. If we can do really good involvement, you know, that's better than doing not so good kind of half-hearted co-production, if that makes sense. So I think there's something about let's do that really well, make sure the feedback's in place, make sure people start to trust that when we engage people and we want to ask opinions, we really genuinely mean it, and we're really genuinely going to do something with that information, even if it is at the end of the day that we can't do everything that people would like, you know, that we've listened, they've been heard, and this is what's happened to it. And then that way you can start to build people up. So next time round, you might be able to do something that's a bit more involved and get people kind of a bit more in that middle space that you were talking about, you know. But I know when we've been talking about sort of within our work, sort of, you know, bringing together focus groups and groups of people that are going to be sort of central and consulted on over a long-term pieces of work or long-term programs and things, quite often people are like, well, what's the point, because nobody ever listens, or, you know, you've consulted with us before and it never got anywhere, so why would I commit my time to this group, sort of thing. So I think, yeah, it's definitely, we need to remember that trust can easily be broken. So it's about whatever level we do, call it what it is, be proud of it as it is, if you see what I mean, do our best to make it the best it can be, and build that trust up slowly to work towards the co-production.
I think it's really important as well when we're trying to design co-production that we take into account like the different access needs of the groups that we're trying to co-produce with, because it may be that we need to run separate groups for different people based on their you know, there might be language barriers, there might be you know, concentration barriers, there might be you know, barriers to their level of understanding. So we need to maybe have different, it might be that people can be involved in a co-production process, but in different ways, to engage them in a different way than we would kind of normally go about. So I think just that being aware of, yeah, what people's access needs are and how we go about engaging them, so that we give them as much of a platform as possible, bearing in mind any kind of limitations that they may have, and find ways to work around that, so that we're even just, you know, being culturally sensitive and having, you know, the way that you might engage with one culture might be different from another, because that's just what they're comfortable with. And it comes back to that building of trust and a safe space for people, so that you know that they know that exactly what's going to happen, and that it's tailored to them rather than them having to tailor themselves to what you produce. I mean, I think one thing which almost goes without saying is that it's really important that we reimburse people for their time and any kind of out-of-pocket expenses that they might have, but also it needs to be a two-way process, so that the people that we're co-producing with, that they're getting something from the process, as well as us gaining the information or the whatever it is that we're asking from them. For example, if the people that I'm working with, if I'll have like individual conversations with them to know what is it that you're hoping to get from this process, and are there things that we can do